Taiwan will surely be reunified with China. Those were the words spoken by China's President Xi Jinping during his annual New Year's address on 31st of December 2023. In truth, the concept of unifying Taiwan with China is nothing new in terms of Xi's rhetoric. He has long said that would happen, though he'd typically use softer language. In the past, he has claimed Taiwan is part of the same family as China, almost treating the island like a rebellious sibling that will come around and recognize its needs to reunite with its older Chinese brother. Xi's tone changed in the 2023 address. There was no mention of family, and other comments from Xi, such as his claims that China reserves the option of taking all necessary measures against any outside forces that try to prevent reunification, are telling. China may be preparing to invade Taiwan. The Taiwanese certainly think that's the case. In April 2023, the country's foreign minister, Joseph Wu, spoke with Andrew Marr on Britain's LBC Tonight radio show. He said, "We are taking the Chinese military threat seriously. I think 2027 is the year that we need to be serious about." Those claims are backed by US military intelligence, according to The Guardian, which believes President Xi has ordered the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, to be ready to annex Taiwan in that year. That brings us to a question. What approach will China take when it invades Taiwan? The conventional wisdom seems to be that China has been building thousands upon thousands of missiles for just this purpose. Those missiles will almost certainly play a role. As recently as May 2024, China ran mock missile strikes to punish Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te, after Lai claimed that China had to face up to the fact that the People's Republic of Taiwan exists during his inauguration address. However, China won't rely on missiles alone to get the job done. It has a secret weapon up its sleeve, a weapon that's been around for decades and one that many may claim is far too outdated to be effective in a modern war. That weapon is the J-6 fighter jet, a Soviet-era fixed-wing plane that's key to China's plan to take Taiwan. The twist here is that China isn't going to be using the J-6 in the way that you might expect. Instead, it's found a way of using them without putting any of its pilots at risk. But let's backtrack for a moment to take a closer look at the J-6 itself. After taking its maiden flight in December 1958, the Shenyang J-6, also known as the F-6 Farmer fighter aircraft, officially entered service in China in December 1961. At the time, it could serve roles as both a fighter and interceptor aircraft, with the jet being based on the classic Soviet design of the MiG-19. Though initially built to meet the aerial requirements of both the PLA Air Force, or PLAAF, and the PLA Naval Air Force, or PLANAF, the J-6 soon became popular as a cost-effective fighter, allowing China to profit from selling it. All told, China delivered around 3,000 J-6s to other countries and built at least 4,500. That means China likely still has at least 1,500 of these old fighter jets in storage. The real number may be as high as 4,500, according to Prayligans, though that is unconfirmed. The plane is designed with a swept wing, which allows it to break the speed of sound on its way to achieving a maximum speed of 960 miles per hour. Though that's far below modern fighters, it's fast enough to keep pace with those craft at cruising speeds, which is a key detail that we'll expand upon later. The jet has an 870-mile range, though this falls to 400 miles when it's engaged in combat, and has a service ceiling of 51,800 feet, with the ability to climb at a speed of 35,000 feet per minute. It's also a fairly small plane, with a wingspan of just 29 feet and 6 inches and a height of 12 feet and 9 inches. Again, that places it below the standards of modern fighter jets, though none of that is likely to matter based on how China intends to use these fixed-wing fighters. It also has a solid weapons loadout, at least for its time. The plane is equipped with a trio of 30mm Type 31 cannons, which are installed on its wings and fuselage. The wing-based variant of the gun can rattle off 70 rounds per minute, with that dropping to 55 rounds for the fuselage variant. Add that to a potential payload of 551 pounds, which can include anti-runway bombs designed to wreak havoc at aerial bases, and a pair of unguided rocket launchers. Depending on the version of the craft, it can also be equipped with PL-2 or PL-5 air-to-air missiles. Again, these are outdated munitions. The PL-2 can carry 19.4 pounds of TNT and is effective at close range, though it loses its impact when fired at long range against modern aircraft. It's also too slow to keep up with any fighter jet capable of hitting speeds above Mach 1, which is pretty much all of them in modern militaries. As for the PL-5, it actually carries less TNT, or TNT equivalent, clocking in at 16.8 pounds, but it accelerates quickly and is better when launched at range. It's not without its weakness though. The sun and solar flares can cause issues with its guidance systems. But now, you're likely seeing a problem. Though these specs may have been impressive during the Cold War era, everything about the J-6, from its weapons to the plane itself, is massively outdated. It certainly doesn't compare well to most modern fighters, including several in the PLAAF arsenal today, which brings us to another question. Why does China have so many of them? So many is the key phrase. As mentioned earlier, China may have as many as 1,500 J-6s available, and it's keeping many of them in air bases that are dangerously close to Taiwan. 3 of those bases, Longtian, Huan, and Jiangsu, will play key roles in China's approach to its invasion. According to AP News, all 3 bases have seen increased activity over the last few years, with Taiwan warning that this activity has included sending both warplanes and warships to each one. The war zone backs this up. In October 2021, it published an article describing the upgrades China has carried out at all 3 over the last few years. It notes that these bases are all on China's east coast, with each being within the J-6's range. Longtian is just 135 miles from Taipei, with Huan being 173 miles away, and Jiangsu, a larger yet achievable for the J-6, 248 miles away from Taiwan's capital. At Longtian, satellite imagery from 2021 shows that China was working on expansions to the base's runways, as well as the development of new aprons. More importantly, China was also building 4 hardened aircraft structures, in which planes are stored to protect them from both the elements and aerial assaults. Those structures will feed into China's plan to use J-6s against Taiwan, as you'll discover later. Huan has seen similar patterns of upgrading over the last few years. Satellite imagery shows the construction of a trio of storage bunkers and upgrades to both runways and aprons. Again, the construction of 4 hardened shelters was noted, which will stand alongside 24 sunshade-style shelters that are already at the base. Move over to Jiangsu, and the hardened shelters aren't in place, or at least weren't in 2021. What China did have was a new air defense site designed to launch surface-to-air missiles, likely as a defense against incoming Taiwanese aircraft and missiles. These aren't the only bases that concern Taiwan. Though Longtian, Huan, and Jiangsu will be key in China's efforts to take Taiwan, the island will also have to worry about several man-made islands China has built in the South China Sea. All are located near the Spratly Islands, which is a collection of around 100 small islands and reefs that are claimed in whole or part by China, Taiwan, the Philippines, and several other nations. They've been disputed territory for decades, with China's construction of man-made islands nearby intended to reinforce Beijing's claim to the islands and exert control by allowing China to install a military presence close to them. Specifically, Taiwan points to 3 bases, built on Subi Reef, Mischief Reef, and Fiery Cross Reef, as all being too close for comfort to Taiping, which is the main island Taiwan claims in the Spratly Islands. The implication here is clear. If China invades, it'll likely use these bases to take Taiping before leveraging them to exert aerial dominance over the South China Sea. So China has 3 major air bases on its east coast that are within spitting distance, from an aerial warfare perspective, to Taipei. It also has 3 more bases around the Spratly Islands that it intends to use to exert its dominance over contested territory in the South China Sea. We also know that China has been amassing the supposedly outdated J-6 at Longtian Air Base and is likely doing the same at Huan. Why does this matter? Sure, having to contend with potentially hundreds of J-6s could cause problems for Taiwan, but the planes are old. They can't contend with modern fighter jets and won't be able to do much against Taiwan's air defenses. There's too much risk involved for China to use them. It could lose hundreds of its pilots if it tries to swarm Taiwan with its enormous collection of J-6 fighters. Therein lies the twist. China doesn't need people to fly its J-6s anymore. Since at least 2013 and potentially earlier, China has been engaged in a concerted effort to transform its massive stock of outdated J-6 fighters into unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. The Eurasian Times reported on these efforts in October 2021, pointing to satellite imagery released by the PLA and its Eastern Theater Command on the social media platform Weibo following the start of a training cycle. Those images revealed at least 50 J-6s located at one of China's strategic coastal air bases. That would typically raise questions, given that the J-6 was decommissioned as an active fighter jet in 2010. It's been used as a trainer ever since. Now it's going to be used as a drone. The Eurasian Times says that satellite imagery shows at least 50 of the fighters at Liancheng Air Base, with old Google Earth images showing that many of them have been taxied at the Jingning Air Base in 2013, 14, and 18. Those are 2 other bases that are close to Taiwan. Both are within 275 miles of the island, and it's practically certain that there are even more converted J-6s located in the trio of bases mentioned earlier. Army Recognition offered more details about how these planes are being converted in an April 2023 article. Building on a Christopher McFadden analysis at Interesting Engineering, the outlet reports that China is likely to use the converted J-6s as suicide drones. It's supposedly doing the same with some of its J-7s, of which the PLAAF has 300. That jet is a third-generation fighter that also dates back to the Soviet era, meaning it's just as outdated as the J-6 in terms of modern fighters. But if that's the case, why would China be sending it out on training missions? Army Recognition notes that training drills conducted by China in 2021 saw 4 J-7s join a group of far more modern J-16s. Taiwan, perhaps somewhat arrogantly, dismissed the J-7s as grandpa jets when reporting on the drill, when the reality is likely that these J-7s have been converted into UAVs to fly alongside China's more modern fixed-wing aircraft. It's an ingenious approach, and one that somewhat mirrors what Russia has been doing in Ukraine. Numerous outlets have reported on Russia using Soviet-era tanks, as well as pulling barrels out of its outdated artillery so it can rejuvenate the modern artillery it has in the field. Those are seen as acts of desperation by many observers, with the pervading story that Russia is running out of weapons and has to draw from its previously mothballed Soviet-era equipment. That isn't what's happening in China with J-6s and J-7s. Rather than scrambling to get these planes into the air because the PLAAF is falling apart and losing its more modern planes, China has instead found a way to transform Soviet-era tech into UAVs that are not only usable but actively dangerous in a modern war. All of which brings us to another question. How does China intend to use its Soviet-era UAVs to invade Taiwan? It all starts with the stockpiling that we're already seeing at many of the Chinese air bases that are closest to Taiwan. China is packing its air bases with hundreds of its converted Soviet-era craft because it intends to use them to create confusion in the skies over the Taiwan Strait when it begins its invasion. How? It all comes down to overwhelming Taiwan's anti-air defenses. According to the Federation of American Scientists, the Hawk surface-to-air, or SAM, missile system is still the mainstay of Taiwan's aerial defenses. Though Taiwan has been working to update these systems, the fact remains that they also date back to the Cold War era. Hawk SAMs first entered operation in 1960, and though they've undergone several design changes since, could be considered outdated compared to modern anti-air systems. They're typically equipped with either MIM-23A or MIM-23B missiles, both of which are more than capable of taking out J-6s. Army Recognition says that the MIM-23A has a maximum range of about 15.5 miles, as well as being an effective close-range defensive missile thanks to its minimum range of 1.2 miles. It also packs a 119-pound warhead, more than enough to shoot a J-6 out of the sky. The MIM-23B is even better, with its maximum range increased to 21.7 miles and its minimum pulled down to 0.93 miles. Add a 165-pound warhead to the mix, and the missile is even better at shooting Soviet-era jets out of the sky. The problem lies with volume. Forbes reports that Hawk launchers typically come with 3 missiles ready to fire before they need to be reloaded. That wouldn't be a problem when dealing with 1 or 2 J-6 UAVs, but China is amassing so many of these jets at its bases because it plans to overwhelm Taiwan's defenses. The strategy will likely be to send a swarm of J-6s to Taiwan, none of which have pilots, triggering the Hawk SAMs to fire. China's more modern jets would likely follow up, taking out the launchers that have spent their munitions firing on the J-6s. Worse yet for Taiwan, any J-6s that get missed during the initial volley of fire could fulfill their potential role as kamikaze drones, obliterating targets merely by crashing into them. Taiwan's indigenous Sky Sword 2 aerial defense systems would face similar problems. Though it's more advanced than the Hawk SAM launchers, aided by CS-MPQ-951 radar, each Sky Sword 2 unit only comes with 4 or 5 missile firing units. Each of those units is stocked up with 5 missiles, giving Sky Sword 2 the ability to fire up to 20 missiles at once before it needs reloading. If Taiwan had dozens of these systems in place, it might be able to deal with China's J-6 attacks. However, it only plans to procure 6 since they went into mass production in November 2023, meaning this more effective form of air defense will be somewhat limited in its scope, even if China holds back on an invasion until 2027, as Taiwan and US intelligence anticipates. Where does that leave Taiwan? It faces a situation where China could feasibly launch dozens of its converted J-6 and J-7 UAVs per attack, with each flying either ahead of or around China's more advanced jets. The sheer volume would confuse Taiwan's anti-air defenses, which would be forced to target as many of the UAVs as possible to stop them from launching their kamikaze attacks. Thus, Taiwan's air defenses get expended quickly, giving China's better jets a clearer route to the Taiwanese mainland. There's another problem this swarming approach creates for Taiwan. It'll reveal where it's installed its aerial defenses. That would have happened without the converted Soviet-era jets, of course, but the reveal would have been accompanied by Taiwan's defenses managing to take out a slew of China's most valuable fighters, along with their pilots. With a swarm of hundreds of J-6 UAVs, China forces Taiwan to play its anti-air hand earlier, allowing it to launch missile attacks from air, sea, and land to take them out, again clearing the path. Taiwan might find itself in a position where it's successfully shooting down hundreds of old planes, only to face a counterattack that weakens its defenses at a point where those defenses are already depleted because of the UAV swarm. These are all issues that are compounded by the fact that the Soviet-era jets aren't useless as combat assets. They may be old, meaning they require constant maintenance, but if China truly has 4,500 J-6s in storage, as Preligan suggests, that means it has plenty of legacy systems it can use to get at least 1,000 of its new UAVs in the air. That sheer volume means that Taiwan's aerial defenses are unlikely to take out the entire swarm, so in addition to depleting Taiwan's defenses, China may also benefit from dozens of their J-6s managing to reach their targets. Remember, these jets have a combat range of about 400 miles, meaning any launch from the 5 coastal bases discussed in this video could easily reach Taipei, as well as most of Taiwan. The jets carry missiles and can serve as makeshift bombers, meaning that any that break through can cause damage before China's more advanced jets and strategic bombers follow up. These Soviet-era UAVs are a threat no matter how you look at them. And interestingly, their use is indicative of an old Chinese military strategy that's been updated for the modern age. In late 2023, the Army University Press noted that China has 36 ancient stratagems, many derived from Sun Tzu's classic text, The Art of War, one of which it is employing with its use of Soviet-era fighters. That stratagem is that a cicada sheds its skin. In the ancient text, the strategy related to an individual, or an entire country, shedding its most distinctive traits, much as a cicada sheds its outer skin to transform into something else. The idea is to deceive, to trick the enemy into believing that you are one thing, only to hit them with an attack they never expected. The Army University Press noted how China used this cicada concept during its transformation from a communist command economy into the market export economy we see today. It will also use the strategy when invading Taiwan. But how? It all comes down to the hardened shelters we mentioned earlier. If you recall, satellite imagery showed that China has built hardened shelters at several of its air bases, including those at Longtian and Huan. It's likely that they have built, or are building, more at other bases. Those hardened shelters are almost a direct reflection of the cicada metaphor, as they allow China to conceal its true strength before launching a renewed strike against Taiwan. That's the opinion of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, non-resident fellow Daniel Rice, who wrote about the concept in a November 2022 edition of the Mitchell Forum. He points out that China had previously stationed the 5th Fendui 180th Attack Brigade at Huan, which was comprised of more than 40 J-6 UAVs. Adding to that, he notes that the number of shelters available at that airbase greatly outweighs the number of J-6s stationed there. He suggests that there are likely up to 98 of these hardened shelters built underground at Huan, in addition to the 4 above-ground shelters mentioned earlier, which would collectively be able to store anywhere between 98 and 294 J-6 UAVs. The reason for this disparity is that the J-6 is considerably smaller than China's more modern fighter jets, so it could conceivably fit several of its new drones into a single shelter, giving it a powerful attack force that would be perfect for the confusing assaults on Taiwan's aerial defenses discussed earlier. It's here where the cicada strategy comes into play. Rice theorizes that the PLAAF may first conceal hundreds of its converted Soviet-era fighters in these hardened shelters, from which they'll launch to unleash an initial assault on Taiwan's defenses. As that assault is ongoing, China will backfill the shelters with more high-end airframes and aerial platforms, allowing for a far more dangerous follow-up attack at a point when Taiwan's aerial defenses are depleted. The cicada sheds its skin. The initial assault will not only overwhelm Taiwan's defenses, but it will also give the island an inaccurate picture of the true nature of China's attack. After all, Taiwan has already referred to the J-7s it's seen on training operations with China's more modern aircraft as grandpa jets. The initial wave of China's attacks may be intended to trick Taiwan into thinking that these older jets are all the PLAAF and the PLANAF have with which to attack. The more of these UAVs China expends, the more Taiwan's missiles are depleted. Then comes the real attack. It's a dangerous and duplicitous strategy for which Taiwan must prepare, which brings us to the final question we'll ask in this video. What can Taiwan do to defend itself against China's use of converted Soviet-era jets? Trying to match China's air force in sheer power or numbers isn't an option. As Global Firepower or GFP reports, China has 3,304 aircraft, compared to Taiwan's 750. That includes China having more than 1,200 fighter jets, around 920 more than Taiwan. Worse yet for Taiwan, those numbers won't include the decommissioned J6s and J7s that China is converting into UAVs. And of course, sending its own fighters out to support its anti-air defenses in taking out China's drone swarm creates risk. Beijing's UAVs don't have pilots. Taiwan's fighter jets would, and they may have to contend with more modern Chinese fighters on top of the UAV swarm. Instead, Taiwan may find success in fighting fire with fire. If China unleashes a swarm, Taiwan should create a hellscape. That's the name given to a potential drone-based Taiwanese strategy, according to the United States Naval Institute, or USNI News. Reporting on a June 2024 experiment conducted by the Center for New American Security, it says that investing in a fleet of low-cost drones could allow Taiwan to create an autonomous, lethal shield against an amphibious invasion. It notes that the drones themselves wouldn't cost much to produce, with the bulk of investment being poured into autonomous targeting systems that would allow the drones to operate as kamikaze aircraft themselves. The rub is that this strategy focuses on China's naval assets. The drones could be used to take out Chinese ships, according to USNI News. However, an expansion of this strategy could also aid Taiwan in taking on the converted J6s. USNI News suggests that Taiwan could manufacture thousands of drones capable of operating on land, sea, and air to essentially pack the 100 or so nautical miles of the Taiwan Strait that separates Taiwan from China. In doing so, it employs the same tactic that China would attempt with its UAVs: pack the strait with so much flying material that confusion reigns. While these drones won't be fast enough to keep up with the J6s in flight, they could confuse targeting systems and conduct kamikaze runs on the UAVs when they're cruising. This, in addition to striking naval vessels, allowing Taiwan to preserve missiles and other anti-air defenses for when it faces the stronger threat of China's more modern planes. Perhaps these concepts give us an idea of how a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would occur. The Taiwan Strait would become an aerial battlefield as much as a naval one, with China's converted Soviet-era jets facing off against a combination of Taiwan's smaller drones and its air defenses. The skies would be filled with metal and explosions, with the winner being determined by which country is able to destroy more of the unmanned aerial platforms than the other. If that's what happens over the Taiwan Strait, who do you think would win? Could Taiwan fend off China's converted jets with a combination of drones and anti-air defenses? Or would China succeed in overwhelming Taiwan, opening up a path to allow it to attack the Taiwanese mainland after depleting its anti-air munitions? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and thank you for watching the video. Now go and check out China's military disaster: why an invasion of Taiwan just became impossible. Or click this other video instead.